The following segment comes from a full SEC preview episode from Running Out the Clock. If you like what you hear in this segment, then be sure and subscribe to the channel so that you can catch all of our SEC previews, including whether or not we think the teams discussed in these previews will do better, worse, or the same this season. We have new friend of the program, Wayne Ingram, jumping in here to give us a bit of a preview about the Tide. Wayne has a bit of a good resume here. He was an intern with the football program the past or for a couple of years while he was a student there. I believe that's how he worded it. So let's turn it over here to Chandler and Wayne for our preview on the Alabama Crimson Tide.
Chandler here. I have got the future 5-star with me, which I have decided that's what I'm going to start calling my son. So Judson's going to help us in the interview process. But we've got Wayne Ingram coming on, Running Out the Clock. He is a good friend of the podcast, a huge fan. He tells me every day how much he listens to it and loves it. Both of the episodes we've done. But Wayne's a 2018 graduate from the University of Alabama, which automatically differentiates him from 99% of the Feinbaum show. So Wayne, man, tell us a little bit about who you are, and thanks so much for a few minutes of your time.
Yeah, glad to come on. Like you said, just graduated this past May, and actually another thing that would distinguish me, other than being present for a lot of Alabama football games in my time, would be I actually worked for the team for my first 3 years of college, so nothing too crazy, just more intern-like work up in the football office, breaking down film, stuff like that. So gave me a good picture of football, a good enough picture to know that I didn't want to coach ball, but I still love talking ball.
Yeah. So that's part of why, why I thought you'd be such a great person to come on and talk about Alabama with us, was because you've been around the program, you've seen it up close, you've actually been to at least one practice this year, maybe a few more. So let's jump right into it, man. Obviously, the big storyline that everybody's talking about, to me, is actually not that interesting of a storyline. I mean, it's the quarterback battle. We know that Tua is the best quarterback on the roster. I mean, we've seen it. So I want to ask you a little bit more, not so much about the actual on the field battle, but just about some of the off the field stuff around it. I mean, Saban has always been a coach that's done a good job of kind of minimizing distractions, and it seems like team chemistry issues never really make it to the average fan, like to me, like somebody who doesn't follow Alabama closely. So this situation is different. What do you kind of see happening? Does this impact the team chemistry wise? I mean, just kind of give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because we've really never seen this with Coach Saban's tenure at Alabama. It literally feels like every year we have a quarterback competition of some sort. But the last time we saw a younger guy challenge a returning starter at quarterback would have been when A.J. McCarron was playing for the Tide in 2010 and was unable to beat out Greg McElroy, much to the chagrin of Julio Jones. But, that's what happens. So it's been an interesting year for him. I think actually that 2010 season was a big learning time for Coach Saban, and one of the reasons why he gives a lot of younger guys more opportunities early on to get going. But the most interesting thing about the Jalen and Tua situation is, with all the hype, with all the talk, Jalen kind of said this, the story is kind of taken on a life of itself. Jalen hasn't made any decisions yet. His parents haven't made any decisions yet. Coach Saban hasn't even decided who the starting quarterback is yet. And yet we've got everybody out here talking, calling into the Feinbaum show. Everyone's got their take. And, now at the end of the day, we all know Tua is a more talented passer. Most people can realize that from, the word coming out of Tuscaloosa that it's going to be his job going into the fall. But that doesn't mean that, Jalen is totally off the team and not going to play. I think now we see it. There's a lot more realistic shot to see something like, maybe not a true two-quarterback system, but bringing Jalen in on the goal line and short yardage areas that he's been so efficient at, getting some of those runs. And, also, I don't know if you've realized, but we often take our starting quarterback out of most games. So there's going to be plenty of time for Jalen to play and develop and get on film. And then if next year, once he graduates in December, he decides he wants to transfer, he transfers. But I feel like that's the most realistic scenario now. Now, there's also a lot of scenarios where he leaves after fall camp whenever a starter is declared, if a starter is declared. And maybe also he plays 3 or 4 games and then decides he wants to sit out the rest of the season to preserve that red shirt. This being the first year of that new red shirt rule, when we're kind of seeing this free agency concept being applied to college football. So I think there's a lot of factors there and a lot to talk about. So I understand why people want to talk about it, but the main thing to understand is nothing's been settled yet. We haven't named a starter. Yeah.
No, you actually brought up a really good point there with the new redshirt rule. I mean, do you think that Saban has given much thought to, playing Tua for 4 games, playing Jalen for 4 games, and then playing is it Mac Jones? Is that the third string guy?
Yeah.
Playing him for 4 games, and then you maintain a redshirt for all 3 of them. So so you get a whole nother year of eligibility.
I'm an accountant, so the numbers side of that really got me fired up the other day when I saw it. But Mac Jones actually already has a red shirt, so he redshirted last year. So
okay,
yeah, but actually the system would work where you just play Mac Jones for most of the season, and then 4 games each for Tua and Jalen.
Give Jalen the 4 non-conference, give Mac the 4 easier SEC teams, and then let Tua take the other 4, and then give Mac the postseason. So there you go. You get all of them back another year.
And it's funny you say that. I think a lot of the reasons why there's not a lot of panic going on down in Tuscaloosa right now is because Mac Jones has had a really, really good spring. He's had a really, really good summer and fall camp so far. This is a guy, he's got a really quick release. He looks like a quarterback back there that we've seen in Alabama's offenses in the past. Looks a lot like the A.J. McCarron, Jake Coker, Greg McElroy type that's really a good pocket passer and gets the ball out quick and just does the little things right. I'm not saying he's an all-pro. He's going to get played, at the next level, but I think we'd be really secure of putting him in that offense and running it with the amount of talent that we're bringing in. And I'll end up talking about that later, but from an offensive talent standpoint, I don't know if we've ever seen a more talented roster in Tuscaloosa. Definitely not in the last 10 years I've been here. We'd probably have to go back to the Bear Bryant days where he would literally sign 50 really, really good players and let them compete.
Because I mean, to me, and again, I'm the casual observer of Alabama football, so I could be off on this, but it seems to me like Alabama has always had, a couple of really good running backs. I hate to use this term because I just don't like it, but that's kind of the best you can do is like a game manager quarterback and then one elite wide receiver. I mean, obviously, Calvin Ridley, most recently, Amari Cooper comes to mind, Julio Jones. You can look at those guys, and then OJ Howard. I mean, you've got a handful of guys that it seems like that there've kind of been one go-to option on the team, and you think that might be a little bit different this year.
Yeah, we definitely going to spread it out. I think it's interesting to look at, the Alabama quarterback position. And I think the biggest argument we probably heard about the Jalen and Tua controversy was, Jalen's 26-2 as a starter. How are you going to bench him after that? Just for clarity's sake, the quarterbacks that Saban's had, I actually didn't look up John Parker Wilson's numbers. He would be low because of that first year in 2007. But Greg McElroy was 24-3. A.J. McCarron was 36-4. You had Blake Sims 12-2, Jake Coker 13-0, and then Jalen here at 26-2. So, the argument of record is really not the best argument to go with here because, like I've said, like you said, the quarterback position and one of the glories of Coach Saban's system is he emphasizes defense and quality skill players and linemen. He doesn't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. A lot of the systems we see in college football today are 100% dependent on the quarterback. You look at Louisville's system, where they used Lamar Jackson last year. You look at Ohio State's system, which only seems to work when they have a guy making throws at quarterback. Auburn's system is probably the best example of it. You think of the years where they've won a lot of games. They've had a guy like Nick Marshall in there, Jarrett Stidham in there, Cam Newton, obviously. And then the down years, they've just had a really average guy in there at quarterback, and they can't seem to score points. So, that's the good thing. And we got young guys that are already here, that are really talented, and a couple of upperclassmen, mostly playing linemen and tight end, that are going to make this offense really special this year.
Yeah. So the future 5-star disagrees. Um, uh, yeah. What you think about that, bud?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the offense is actually really interesting to me, just because it does present the chance to be way more open than Alabama offenses have been, especially under Saban. And I mean, they've always had very efficient offenses. I mean, obviously, you can't argue with what is he won 5 national championships in 10 years or 6 or
Mm-hmm.
however many it's been. You can't. I mean, you can't argue with the results at all. But what do you think that does, though? I mean, if this team has a little bit more of an offensive identity than a defensive one, or do you think that happens?
Well, for sure. And if you look at our roster, our strength coming back is our offense. On defense, we got a lot of guys that, you know, might have popped off the page because they were highly touted recruits, but they haven't been playing much ball down in Tuscaloosa. They're going to have to learn a lot. And fortunately, our schedule allows us to have a lot of games early in the season to get guys ready to play. But, you've also got, depth on the roster that we didn't really see in the last few years, and guys that are going to come in and not just play well, but maybe even play better than the guy that played there last year. You look at the safety position. There's a lot of hype around Xavier McKinney and Deontay Thompson playing safety. We got a guy named Quinnen Williams coming in, who is a Winona Dragon out of Birmingham, the home of De'Runnya Wilson for you Mississippi State fans. And
Joseph
he's
will appreciate that reference.
Yeah, he's a redshirt sophomore, third-year guy. Really added some muscle and cut a lot of fat this offseason. And he's going to play inside at nose guard. I guess slightly undersized by some standards, but he's going to bring a lot of quickness and strength and really be an every down player in there on the interior of the defensive line. Maybe gets overshadowed by the guy down there at the end, Raekwon Davis, just because Raekwon might be one of the most physically gifted defensive linemen I've ever seen. But we're going to have guys like that step up, that have been there for a few years, but no one really knows them because they haven't been playing. We've also got a lot of buzz coming out. A kid named Jalen Waddell, that's a wide receiver out of Texas that, just watching him this fall, I mean, he's got some of the best burst I've ever seen coming out of routes. Brings a lot of juice. Reminds me a lot of Calvin Ridley. But just runs really smooth routes and has really soft hands to catch the ball. So, even in a really competitive position like wide receiver, I think we're going to see some freshmen getting in. Then you got senior leaders like Hale Henniges coming in to play tight end. Could probably block anyone in the country. And then we've got, just to give the special teams some love, and not the field goal kickers. We don't talk about that. But Skylar DeLong is a freshman coming in to take over punting duties from J.K. Scott. And he's looking like he's going to be able to play comparable to J.K. So overall, a lot of new faces, but probably going to be the same similar outcomes of we're just going to have to win games late in the season to see if we can win a championship, but ought to be able to take care of business.
Yeah, it seems weird to say that a punter has left massive shoes to fill, but that's definitely not just because his feet are huge, because JK is like 8 feet tall.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I mean, to have seen a punter that could change a game the way that he could, it's weird to think, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely the case. Now, you kind of touched on this a minute ago, but I want to go back to it. You mentioned a bunch of guys, especially on defense, but you mentioned a bunch of guys on the team as a whole. Who is somebody that right now going into the year, I don't know his name, but halfway through the year, end of the year, it always seems like Alabama has a guy that, unless you're just the hardcore recruit Nick, know all the 5 stars where they go, or maybe it's a guy that they find a guy that was a underrated recruit. Who's the guy that I don't know his name right now, but halfway through the season he'll be a household name?
Yeah, I think a lot of those guys on offense are at the running back position. Damian Harris is the returning starter. Everyone knows him. The other guys got a lot of touches last year were Bo Scarborough and Josh Jacobs. Bo obviously playing for the Cowboys now. Josh has had a really good offseason of getting healthy. That's always been his problem is staying healthy. And I think when he's healthy, he's one of the best backs in the country. The other 2 guys, Najee Harris kind of got his name out there in the national championship game doing some running, but You talk about having everything you want to see. He looks like a Olympic hurdler out there running the ball. And then sophomore out of Tuscaloosa, played at Hillcrest, Brian Robinson, a guy that's got comparable size to the Bo Scarboroughs and the Derrick Henry, and even going back to Justin Fowler. He's that size kind of back, but still has that high end speed once he gets up to speed. So I'm looking forward to see how deep we can go and handing the ball off this fall. And then over on defense, all our DBs are brand new. Trayvon Diggs is a guy that'll start on defense this year. His older brother, Stephon Diggs, is the wide receiver for the Vikings, but he's an explosive athlete, going to be playing corner for us. But really the guy that I like on defense that might not get touted a lot is Shaheem Carter. Third-year guy that's coming in. Haven't played a lot of special teams, so he's got good experience, but he's going to be taking over for Minka Fitzpatrick in the nickel role, which is so important the way that teams run offense now, that you're going to see a lot of him making plays, hawking to the ball, but also being able to play some run support. So those would be the guys that I would touch on just across the board.
Yeah, and Shaheem is a guy that especially kind of hurts my feelings because he on signing day chose Alabama over Ole Miss. And, I might actually be looking forward to football season if we had a guy like Shaheem on our team. But, the rich get richer. So as I look at the Alabama schedule, I don't see a game that they should lose. I mean, the Iron Bowl can always go either way. I think especially now that it seems like Auburn is kind of a stride. But what's a game or two that you look at that you think, I don't know that people are giving that team enough credit or enough attention, and not that it necessarily makes you nervous, but the game or two that you could look at and say, man, like that really could, if some things don't go right, that could really kind of not be great for us.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. As much as ESPN and College Football Playoff Committee gets hated on for loving the Tide, Vegas loves the Tide. I mean, I think we've been the underdog in 2 games since 2008. That 2008 SEC championship against Florida, and then playing against 2015 against Georgia. We were the underdog. And so, going in this year, you look at all the games, you think we ought to be able to sweep, get to the Iron Bowl. The Iron Bowl's at home this year. And so without making any guarantees, without seeing Auburn play this year, I feel a lot better about that as an Alabama fan. As a football mind, I'm not sure that home field advantage matters as much as we like to make it out to be. But then after that, an SEC championship matchup with Georgia would be another clash. They certainly have enough motivation to get back to that game and enough skill and talent to give us a run. And then you get in the college football playoff and you wonder, who are we going to get matched up with? Are we going to be playing? What's going to happen with Ohio State? Is Washington as good as they say that we could get a Pac-12 team back in the playoff? And then as an SEC team that, doesn't really get a lot of love, Mississippi State is going to be that team this year where they've got a good enough roster. I mean, they took us toe-to-toe last year down in Starkville. And if Moorhead could get some offensive schemes prepared to maybe test some of these young DBs and linebackers, then they could really give us a shock right there as we're getting ready to play Auburn.
As soon as you mentioned Mississippi State, the future 5-star started crying. So I know he is my son.
He is indeed.
But that is a game that I think defensively Mississippi State can keep it interesting enough. But the recipe to beating Saban coach teams have been explosive wide receivers and quarterbacks that can successfully throw the ball down the field. And I think with Alabama's added prowess on offense, I don't know that Mississippi State has that yet. Nick Fitzgerald definitely has the potential to be one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the SEC. But, I need to see him throw the ball down the field a little bit more, and I need to see some receivers that get separation. But I do think that's a great team to kind of look at and think, if we don't bring our A game, and like you said, it's right before Auburn, so you're getting ready for something else. I mean, if you're not focused for that could definitely be something that would derail your season a little bit. And so, speaking of that, knowing a Nick Saban coach team, knowing a Nick Saban recruited team, lots of talent. Yeah, is that what you think?
Too much Mississippi State.
Yeah, for real, for real. We'll try to move on. The best case scenario for a Saban coach team is always going to be a national championship. So we won't even address that. Because I think when you look at teams and just their talent level, to me it seems like it's Clemson and it's Alabama, and then everybody else is kind of a tier below that. I think Georgia is probably getting there. They lost a lot of experience last year. Anyway, none of that's the point. Best case scenario is a SEC championship, national championship. What in your mind is the worst case scenario, and how does that happen?
Yeah, so let's have some fun with this one. Worst case scenario, I think you start off looking at the fact that our defense has so many new guys. We don't have much depth at middle linebacker, or at inside linebacker, as we call it. Outside linebacker-wise, the guys that we pretty much use as speed rush defensive ends, we've got plenty of talent there. But when you look at inside, we've got Dylan Moses and Mac Wilson, who are going to be two of the best linebackers in the conference. But behind them, we don't really have that many options. So we would have to get some injuries there, which both those guys dealt with injuries last year. And then when you look at our secondary, obviously breaking in really 6 new starters if you go into dime, there's no certainty there. So, if we had some busts there, had some injuries at middle linebacker, and then over on offense, I think your nightmare scenario is Jalen ends up transferring, and then, midway through the season, Tua goes down. So like I said, Mac Jones, we feel really okay to put him in the game. I don't know if we're still feeling really, really good to put him in the game, knowing that we're going to have to score a lot of points to win if our defense is hurting. So that's it. And then I think also a lot of turnover there. We got 2 new coordinators, Mike Loxley coming in to be the offensive coordinator, who has done a lot more with less than a lot of other coordinators have done. You look at the coaches or the teams he's coached, Maryland and New Mexico State. He had to do a lot of problem solving then. Mm-hmm. So how is he going to be able to handle having a ton of talent? Which my answer would be, I think he's going to do a great job. And then over on defense, how's Tosh going to handle calling the defense for the first time? Having to kind of see the bigger picture. And, listen, everyone knows Tosh Lupoy is an incredible recruiter, and he is far and beyond one of the best outside linebackers coach in football right now. But I think this is a good challenge for Tosh. I think it's something he could really do well at. And I think there's also a lot of uncertainty there. So my nightmare scenario all goes like that. And then, maybe us losing to Auburn again and getting left out of the playoff and not wanting to be at the Sugar Bowl or wherever they put us and losing that game. So
yeah, because you can see some injuries happening or some things not going just right, and just talent alone still being better than everybody on your regular season, with the exception of Auburn. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. And then tell me a little bit. I saw this news this morning. A 5-star linebacker that signed with Washington is now enrolling at Alabama. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's actually a interesting story. I was in there the other day and saw that it broke, and Nick Saban was one of the most vocal people of saying that this free agency model, this new redshirt rule, that they weren't going to really help. Well, I think he liked the redshirt rule, but really the transferring rule and being able to go within conference, that they weren't really going to help the game. And everybody thought he was whining, just complaining that people were going to come take his 5 stars. And here we go. The first casualty of the system is we've taken someone else's 5-star. No, but there's obviously, if you read the story, there's obviously a lot of personal issues going on with the guy and his family. Sounds like he's lost some weight. And so, obviously for him, I want him to do well. And I know Alabama's a place where we don't shy away from a lot of family issues that could, hold guys back. Like, we really want to come in there and help them as people. So I'm hoping that the coaches and staff really can take him in and help him out as a person first and foremost, get him healthy mentally and physically. And then if he's here to play football and he can play football well, then let's get him on the field.
No, good thoughts there. And again, it's just kind of you see that story like that break, and you just kind of like, well, again, the rich get richer. But no, if you're a top linebacker, I don't know why you would want to play anywhere else, just with Saban's track record of getting those guys in the NFL, and then they go on to have great careers. So So yeah, I mean, I think that's about all I got. So I mean, you got any other thoughts? Anything that you want to just kind of mention that we hadn't talked about, or anything like
No,
that?
I mean, I think really the most compelling part of the SEC this year is there's a lot of people in the same boat. We've got all these first year coaches. We got a lot of guys that are trying to take rosters and revamp them to their system. So I think it's going to be a really interesting year. The Feinbaum word he always likes to use is parity. There's going to be a lot of parity in the SEC, if you like pears and parity. So we'll see how that goes. And, it'll be interesting to see how the standings finish out, especially on the East, where it seems like Georgia's to win. But, the East can get so tricky with winning the right game here and there that you never know who's going to finish in the championship game. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I think regarding the East, the only reason Georgia slips up would be probably inexperience, and I don't think that's a problem after this year. I look at that, and obviously could be wrong, but I look at that and think that Georgia's just going to run away with the East for as long as Kirby's there. So yeah, well, man, thanks so much for talking about the Tide with me. The future 5-star, I think, is ready to take a nap, so we're going to go. But
I think he heard
so
you say talking about the Tide and thought you were about to say talking about the Knowles. So he thought it was his time to chime in.
And the other guys on the podcast are going to be very, very excited that a talking about the Knowles reference got in that I didn't bring up. So
yeah.
So good job there. So Wayne, man, thanks so much. Holler at me next time you're in town. And man, appreciate you.
Absolutely. Take it easy, Chandler.
All right, man.
Thanks again for listening to this specific individual team preview. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to Running Out the Clock so you don't miss any more of our SEC previews leading up to this season. You can find the full episode that this comes from by searching for our 2018 SEC Preview full episodes. And you'll want to listen to that because we give a verdict at the end of whether or not we feel like the team mentioned will do better, worse, or stay the same. For Running Out the Clock, I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Thanks for listening.